So, but like I say, they're lovely people. But I do not agree with their theology. I don't agree with what they teach. I don't. Bottom line, I believe that Joseph Smith was deceived. Maybe, I don't know if it was a demon or that appeared as an angel. Paul, in one of his letters, says that even Satan himself appears as an angel of light. Well, that's how Moroni was described, an angel who brought light, who brought truth. And unfortunately, I think that's what Joseph Smith was listening to. When these writings were dictated to him, that's his own claim. The writings were dictated to him by Moroni, the angel. So, but there are a lot of other churches there. I actually have been to, I pastored a church called a Bible Church in Kansas, and it was non-denominational. We didn't affiliate with any denomination, but we believed the same thing as many denominations. I went to a similar kind of church in Dallas. I've been to Baptist churches. When I was working for John Deere, I went to a Baptist church back in Waterloo, Iowa, and we believe the same thing. I still believe the same thing that the Baptist church did. I believe the same thing that both Bible churches did, and there are a lot of churches. I have friends who have pastored in different denominations, and I believe the same things they do. There are some very minor differences. They're like really insignificant. Some of them, like friends who pastor a more formal church, and these are Protestant churches, but they pastor a more formal church, and in their church, their pastors wear like these robe things. I just wear casual slacks and a dress shirt, and I don't wear a robe. So that's the major difference. It's kind of like, well, that's not really a difference at all. It doesn't matter, bottom line. And then some churches have like different styles of music. A more formal church has typically a more what they call high church music, and it's some like more of the ancient hymns and things like that. We do some of those, but we also do some contemporary stuff too. So.
Mm-hmm. There are also, for example, there are churches that are in the Appalachians, for example, that use snakes as mediums to.
Yes, I know.
Yes, right.
That I think is something that I think that's a misunderstanding of some statements in the scriptures.
Oh,
I don't believe that that's legitimate. And I know there was a guy, I think down in Kentucky, just maybe 4 months ago, who was killed. I think I can't remember if his father had died of the same thing or if his father just, died of old age. But I think his father had been involved in the same thing, and he was, doing the snake handling thing, and he got bit and he died. And, and I think that's silly myself.
Right.
We don't do anything like that here.
Right.
So, and I would never endorse going to a church like that myself. I just think it's over the top. I think it's silliness. And like I say, they glean these ideas from statements in Scripture, but they totally misunderstand. They actually. One of the things you have to realize is that the Scriptures were written in normal language. Sometimes the Scriptures use poetry, and if you want to understand poetry, you have to interpret it as poetry. Sometimes the Scriptures use what's called hyperbole. That's overstatement. Jesus used hyperbole in order to drive home a point. Well, Jesus didn't mean the statements that he made that were hyperbole literally. He meant them as hyperbole to try to. It's kind of like you get people's attention when you say things like that, and so if you run across hyperbole in any kind of writing, you interpret it as hyperbole. So the language of the Scriptures is just normal language, normal everyday language, and you have to be able to discern between poetry, between history, those kinds of things. So that's really important. And again, I don't agree at all with snake handling. I don't think that's legitimate.
Right. So, there are so many different denominations. And my question. Well, you already kind of answered my question about why are there so many denominations, and a lot of times it's different interpretations.
It is different interpretations,
right?
Sometimes, and that there back in the 1920s there was a big controversy about the very thing you're talking about, and there was a group of scholars that said, okay, we need to try to get a handle on this. We need to get a beat on this thing. And what they did, I think one of those or maybe a couple of guys contributed, they wrote a book, and they said, these are the things that are non-negotiable. And I think they had 5 things that were non-negotiable. And they said if a person accepts these 5 things, they would be considered an evangelical. They would be considered a Christian. And it boils down to just that many things, just a few things. Now, like for instance, one of the things that distinguishes one denomination from another denomination is the area of prophecy. And that's a tough area. I mean, because you read the book of Revelation, and it's filled with imagery. It's filled with all sorts of word pictures, and I think that when John wrote that, I think the Lord was giving him a vision of what the future would be. And so, John had never experienced, just like, let's say if you and I had lived, maybe 100 years ago, and somebody had told us, or somebody had given us a vision of a rocket ship to the moon, we would have a hard time describing that because we wouldn't have anything in our experience that we could relate it to. We would say, well, there's this great big, tube. We might describe it as a tube, or, this great big tower that's sitting out on this flat, hard surface, and all of a sudden the thing caught on fire. Underneath at the bottom, it caught on fire, and it started moving up. And, that's the way we would have to describe it, because we wouldn't have any reference point. Well, that's why Revelation is the way it is, I believe, because John was seeing things that I've never seen anything like this in my life. Well, that's the area of prophecy. There are churches that believe different things about prophecy, and you know what? I would be comfortable in any one of those churches, and I sincerely mean that. There's some churches